Hello, Alex here, and today we're going to talk about my unboxing and first impressions of the Mint InstantKon SF70, which I purchased just over a week ago from buymorefilm.com. A bit more about that later, but for now, let's get into it. So we'll start with a quick overview of the video and some disclaimers that I need to make. Firstly, this video is not sponsored and I bought the camera with my own money. I was able to get it early thanks to Stephen from buymorefilm.com, but that was just because he had it listed on his website. I didn't get any special treatment, nor did I get anything extra in the package beyond what he would normally include for an expensive purchase. Secondly, while this isn't my first instant film camera, it is my first Instax camera, and it is also my first medium format because it is about 6x6 medium format rangefinder. So you have to kind of bear this in mind. I'm not comparing this to something like a Mamiya 6 or a Mamiya 7 because I have no experience with those cameras. Thirdly, by the time this video goes live, I will only barely have had the camera for a week, so it is very, very much a first impressions. I've been blitzing through film. I'm on my 4th pack of film as I'm recording this, and I'll probably be finished that pack by the time the video goes live. You know, I haven't had it for 2 or 3 weeks to really run it through its paces or anything like that. The weather has been horrible here. A lot of the pictures are quite uninspired artistically, but I've had a lot of fun with it regardless. The Mint InstantKon SF70, which I'll just call the SF70 from here on, is an Instax Square format rangefinder camera produced by Mint as part of their premium high-end Instax camera line. If you're familiar with the RF70, which came out quite a while ago, this is basically the same camera, just squashed so it will take Instax Square film rather than Instax wide film. Within the context of the Instax system, these cameras are pretty unique in that they offer full manual controls, an auto mode with a light meter for aperture priority shooting, a built-in flash which you can't control, but you do have the absolute power to turn on and off by popping it up or not popping it up, true rangefinder focusing, albeit uncoupled, a fast aperture f5.6 lens, and I know that doesn't sound too amazing to people like me who would be used to something like f2 to f3.5 for, you know, your 100-ish millimeter lens on 6x6, 6x7, but bear in mind that most Instax cameras top out at like f10 or so. So that's a stop and a half faster, or stop and 2/3. That's a lot better. Speaking of the lens, it is a 93mm f5.6 mint optic design with a glass front element and 2 molded plastic aspherical elements to make up the rest of the optical formula. If you want to use 35mm equivalents using the vertical field of view, which is more accurate in this case compared to a 35mm frame, it's more of a 50mm f3, thereabouts. And to be honest, that is a pretty good angle of view / depth of field equivalent to have on an everyday instant film camera. I'm not a big fan of most instant film cameras having a really wide angle, at least within the Instax market. Most of them are like 28 to 35mm equivalent in 35mm terms. So having this to give more emphasis on your subject, that's good by me. The aperture range goes from f5.6 down to f22. You have a half stop between 5.6 and f8, so f6.7, and everything after that goes down in full stops. In terms of focusing, using the rangefinder, this lens can focus down from infinity to 75 centimeters, 0.75 meters, which is pretty good for a rangefinder in a medium format style, and it's pretty okay given the angle of view that this lens actually gives you. Your shutter speed options range from 1 second down to 1/500th of a second, and you do have the auto mode along with plus and minus 1-stop exposure compensation. The shutter is a leaf shutter type, which means it's extremely quiet. Ergonomically, the camera is pretty good. I can take a nice hold of it. I'm not a big fan of using my thumb to control the rangefinder, but that's just because of my arthritis. I would much prefer a finger-based focusing tab like you'd have on some Leica M cameras or lenses. That's entirely subjective and down to me. I think that will be fine for most people. The actual grip to hold it with your right hand is pretty good. It's quite shallow, but the camera is relatively thick, so it works out well overall. The last major feature I want to talk about on the body itself is the film ejection lever, which is styled like an old medium format or 35mm film advance lever. Even though it's just an electronic switch, it is quite satisfying to use. Because this is a manual process that you trigger yourself, you can take as many exposures as you want on a single frame and then eject it later on. This also means that if you're doing something like street photography, you can take the picture with the nearly silent leaf shutter and then eject it once you've left your scene or whatever, if that's your thing. This is how I received the package from Buy More Film. Inside this outer packaging, the first thing we have is this cute little Polaroid with a nice message on it. Under this, we have a Buy More Film tote bag. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have bought one myself because tote bags aren't really my thing, but I'm absolutely going to use it now that I have one. We have a few Mint InstantKon SF70 stickers, make ordinary days extraordinary, 35mm keychain. Honestly, I will use that. I need a new keychain. Mint Instant Inspiration stickers and prints of the Instax pictures that they actually use to market the camera on their website. Buy more film, shoot more film, shoot more expired film. See, that's me. I'm a little goblin for expired film. Film soup. Yep, I have some plans for something along those lines. Buy film, not megapixels. Best hashtag on Instagram. Fight me. 35mm and Homer drooling over BMF. Lastly, we have two cards here, both Kodak. Bring your vacation home in a Kodak. And a picture of a bunch of Kodak films that you mostly can't buy anymore, along with some Fuji stuff as well. Now there's a little personalized note from Steven saying, "Hey Alex, thanks for your second order, man. Enjoy the camera. Best regards, Steven." This guy is an absolute legend. I'll be talking more about him later, as I said. The last thing we need to talk about before we get into the actual box are the ND filters that come with the camera, so you can control your exposure because the film is ISO 800. So we have this outer sleeve. There's actually nothing else in here, which is kind of funny. Mixed lighting is a pain. I'm sorry. I promise I'll buy some real lights soon. This is the camera itself. It is quite large, but once you collapse it down, it realistically wouldn't take up too much space in your bag. So I did get a bunch of film to test this out with. I don't know how much I'm going to use, but I'm probably going to run out of time sooner than I run out of film, unless I go crazy with the exposure compensation and trying things out. So I just threw two AA batteries into the camera. That's what powers it. And now we're going to load it with a pack of film, and I'm going to go start shooting. This is the rear side, and this is where the little pressure jiggies in the back door will press the cartridge forward to make sure that it stays in place. So all going well, we just close this up. Okay, so that took me a second. I didn't realize that when you load the film, you have to actually open the camera in order to be able to eject the dark slide. So we're going to do that now. We start just by pulling on this side, pulling this open as far as you can, and then you need to manually straighten each of these bars. There are one on each side, so I'll just do it like this. That's fully secure. There are two locating pins here. I'll take better pictures of those in future. And now we can see the rear LCD has lit up because the camera is not set to off, at which point we can just turn the release lever. That was slower than I expected. And that's the dark slide. And now we're ready to go. The build quality. Despite being made of plastic, it's a pretty high quality plastic and no part of the camera feels overly weak or flexible. The rear door is a little bit loose and light, but once you actually clip it into place, it's extremely solid. So I think maybe the hinge is just a bit loose there. But there are no issues with light leaks or anything like that. The bellows are strong and tough. I've gently felt them. I'm pretty happy with the build quality overall. However, the lack of weather sealing may put a lot of people off. The rangefinder, although a bit impractical to use, is extremely accurate, and even at f5.6 I have no trouble nailing focus, even at the minimum focusing distance. When stopped down, the lens is extraordinarily sharp. Like, oh my god, it is definitely out-resolving the film from about f11 onwards. f8 is pretty good, wider apertures, not so much. The inclusion of features such as a threaded cable release on the shutter button, as well as a flash sync cord, which uses the 2.5mm like headphone jack rather than an actual PC sync cord, not the end of the world. Just having those features in general is really nice, and being able to use these in addition to the full manual controls to take control of your shots in a real way is very, very nice. Lastly, the overall shooting experience. It's really fun to use, and it feels like a traditional medium format camera, but with the benefit of the near instant gratification of Instax film. Firstly, the rangefinder being uncoupled from the viewfinder is a pretty mild annoyance for me. That's going to put a lot of people off. It's not like something like a Leica M camera, a Voigtlander Bessa, the Hasselblad X-Pan, where you just look through a single viewfinder and you have your patch in the middle. It's not like that. However, the viewfinder window is actually extremely bright and clear, and even me with my pretty bad eyesight, I can focus extremely easily no matter what. Secondly, you really need to keep this camera clean. I was having issues with some shots on my first and second rolls with incomplete spreading of the development chemicals across the negative, leading to these horrible marks you see in the top left of these frames. I just used a little basic rocket blower, blew inside the camera before I put in the next pack of film, and everything's right as rain now. But nevertheless, it is a small inconvenience, and it can have a negative effect on your images if you don't keep the camera clean. At f5.6 for sure, and less so at f6.7, the lens isn't very sharp. It's got a lot of dreamy glow. There's a decent amount of resolution there, but there's a lot of spherical aberration that causes this glow or halation around everything. That can be used for artistic effect, like in this picture here of the flowers. I did that on purpose, not for depth of field, but just because flowers, they look pretty with that kind of thing. But nevertheless, it's not something that everybody's going to like, and in an objective sense, I would have expected it to perform a little bit better in that regard. This is the big one, and I'm probably going to ramble about this for a couple of minutes. The frame lines in the viewfinder do not accurately represent what you're actually capturing. I have reached out to Mint to ask them if I'm doing something wrong, if I'm misunderstanding how the frame lines work, or if it is indeed a design problem that needs to be addressed. But it's the weekend, so they haven't got back to me yet. So what the hell am I talking about? This is the view through the viewfinder as captured on my phone. On a traditional rangefinder camera, you would expect that the full square would represent your field of view when focused to infinity or near infinity, and that the smaller square inset in the lower right would represent your frame lines to compensate for parallax when shooting at close focusing distances. I noted with a few shots, such as this, and this, that my actual field of view I was capturing was completely different to what was actually shown in the viewfinder, or at least in relation to what I framed in the viewfinder. If we go back to this picture of the bike here, the top and bottom of this bike were centered within the larger square, and they were at the edges of that square. Yet in the final image, the overall image is shifted down and to the right a lot more than just parallax could account for at a distance of, I think it was like 1.82 meters, something like that, about 6 feet. Similarly, my last frame of Instax monochrome had the same effect when I took a picture of this painting on my wall at home. Then, after I figured out what the problem was, I framed the picture within the lower right inset square, and boom, there you go, it came out perfectly. Here's a quick sketch that I made on my phone, just to draw some extra lines to show what your actual field of view is. That lower inset square is essentially the center of your frame, and the top left corner is the top left corner of your final image, but it extends further to the right and further down than the overall size of that larger square. And once I figured this out and started accounting for this, instantly my photos became so much better. Apart from the usual mistakes that you get with a camera like this, like forgetting to add one-stop exposure compensation when shooting a scene, including the sky. The final con I want to talk about is the elephant in the room, the price. At a retail cost of 840 euros, it's way beyond the scope of what most people could justify. I'm lucky to be able to be in a position myself where I could afford a camera like this, and I do enjoy it, but the price is a lot of money. It's a niche product produced in a low volume, so fine, it's going to be a bit expensive. That doesn't mean the price is, in an absolute sense, affordable, which it isn't, and a lot of people won't be able to afford it, but I do think the price can be justified to a point. Given how few options there are to shoot instant film in a medium format camera, I mean, you have some Polaroid backs, but you're paying a fortune per shot, 4 or 5 times what you pay for Instax. And some of the Instax backs either don't work that well or haven't released yet, like the HVSQ. So yeah, it could be appealing to the right medium format shooter. For the more traditional Instax customer, again with their SQ6 or the like, it's a tough sell. It's a lot harder to use. The fact that there's no autofocus, there's no zone focus, you have to really use the rangefinder. That would put off a lot of the more, family party pictures kind of crowd. So to the general person, probably not. But to the right person with a medium format system who wants to get into Instax film and retain control, yeah, I think it could be a pretty good option if you can work around that issue with the frame lines. So thank you for sticking around to the end of this video where I unboxed and gave my first impressions on the Mint InstantKon SF70 Instax Square rangefinder camera. This thing has been a blast to shoot for the last few days, and I'm really looking forward to continuing shooting it as time goes on. I might not even bring a real camera home to my parents for Christmas. I might just bring this and a couple of packs of film, and that could be me. I do need to give a big shout out to Buy More Film here. I have ordered from them before because, as it was noted in the Polaroid that came in the box, this was my second order, not my first, and I bought a bunch of expired film from there specifically for content for 2022. You can get used point and shoot cameras, TLRs, rangefinders, SLRs, and instant cameras, fresh and expired color negative black and white and slide film in 35 and 120, and even expired instant film, which is extremely hard to come by. BMF are based in the Netherlands, so if you're based in this part of the world, it's well worth having a look at their site and seeing if there's anything out there that might catch your eye. If you enjoy this video and like what I do on the channel, please consider subscribing or donating to my Patreon, where the tiers start at just €1 per month. If you don't already, follow me on Instagram at shaka1277 for new pictures every single day. So this will be my final video of 2021, and I'm probably going to take 3 or 4 weeks off before posting the next. So thank you all sincerely for your support since reviving this channel in the start of this year. I really appreciate every single comment and interaction I have about this content, whether it's on Discord, Instagram, here on YouTube, wherever. I've really enjoyed talking to a lot of people, and I've met some pretty cool people through this. Yeah, I could go on and on, but I just want to say I really appreciate everything, and I wish you all a happy holiday. And I'll see you in 2022. Bye bye for now.